My name is Ken Ford. I'm a volunteer with the St. Petersburg Red Cross, and we're here today to interview Romeo Bonnette. Served in World War II, and my background is I was a veteran of Vietnam, and Mr. Bonnette will start the interview discussing a little pre-war, your pre-enlistment background. So take it away.
Well, I was in high school when the war was going on, and I thought the war would be over by the time I got out of high school. And I got out in 43. It's sad to say it wasn't over. About that time, I did receive a draft notice. I was 18, a little over 18. And I knew when I graduated in June that I would be going in, so rather than wait for them to actually call me, I had the induction notice, but I just went to the...
Let me ask you, where did you go to school? Where is this?
New Orleans.
New Orleans,
Louisiana.
What school did you go to?
Fort J High School.
Okay.
Yeah. So I said, well, why delay the inevitable? So I went to the draft board and said, I'm here. What do I do? Well, they were taking by quota so many guys into the Marines, the Navy, and the Army. And I don't know why, I just thought I'd go in the Marines. They had pretty nice uniforms. I wanted the Marines, but I went to the Marine desk, and the guy said, we have our quota for today. So I said, no. He said, how about the Navy? I said, I wasn't too sure about the Navy. So I said, okay. They stamped Army, and I was in the Army, just like that. Well, that was in July of 43. And I went to, they shipped us out to Camp Aldous, Texas, in the Panhandle. And that was one, like I said, the land that God forgot. It was just so, and we went in the wintertime. And that place was so cold, we went out on bivouac one time. We couldn't have a fire, and the canteens froze up. I mean, it was a miserable night, but you learn when you were in the Army then.
What time of the year was that?
In November, December.
Okay.
December,
Winter
yeah.
time, yeah.
Excuse me. Well, we got back to camp, which was a blessing because we got into a routine, which basic training is usually good, 16 weeks. 16 weeks of basic training. And I really didn't mind basic training. I was kind of thin when I went in. I weighed 125 pounds, soaking wet. And I figured, well, it should do me more good than harm. And it did. I mean, the routine, the good food, the everything was really great. I enjoyed it, to tell you the truth. And I grew. I mean, I gained weight. I think by the end of basic training, I was about 150, 160 pounds. And so it did me real good, and I really enjoyed it. And the training was really great. We had, before breakfast every morning, we'd run a small obstacle course. And then evenings, what did we do? Well, in barracks, there was this guy from Texas, believe it or not, in our group. And man, he would just sing, when my blue moon turns to gold again, till he drove you crazy. Whatever he was doing, clean his rifle or whatever. He'd just sing that song till he was about ready to put a combat boot in his mouth to shut him up. You know? And, well, what can you say? The basic training was, it was good. I really enjoyed it. And, well, it was very interesting. They had one thing we had to do was to go through a obstacle course on the ground. Machine gun bullets were fired 18 inches above your head, and barbed wire hair and explosions, and you had to crawl under there, and they'd blow on those, and you didn't want to jump up because the bullets were about 18 heads over your head. Excuse me. Excuse me. And we'd do it at nighttime too, and then we could see the tracers every so often. They put a tracer in it, and you'd see that little live bullet flying over your head. And they told us when we got in the trench on this end, if you got dirt in your rifle, you do it over again, see, so you made sure
Yeah.
that baby was cuddled up close to you. So, and well, basic training, great. We did the 16 weeks and they gave us a 10-day furlough to go home, which just pretty much say goodbye until we, to a family and we had a high school sweetheart there.
Mm-hmm.
But they brought us on train in New Orleans. It was the old steam engines. And they put those seats could fold to face 4 guys with 4 duffel bags in 2 seats. And it was from New Orleans to San Francisco. It was about a nice long ride. If you opened the windows, all the cinders would come in the windows. It was the old time. It's not like today. But we got to San Francisco, Fort Ord. We went there too long and we found out they started issuing us winter clothing. So we figured, well, we were going to go up to Europe somewhere. But all of a sudden we got aboard ship. I could say a ship, but this was a Liberty ship. And we were looking for a convoy. And there was this one Liberty ship they put us on. It was so loaded with equipment. They had catwalks to get it from Fort Aft to the ship. They had little bunkhouse for 4 soldiers and 4 soldiers over here. And we were a guard for that cargo. They had a Navy gun crew, a merchant marine on it, and we were guards for this cargo. Who we were guarding from out in the ocean, I wouldn't have any idea.
Okay, I was going to ask you, when you left boot camp to go out to Fort Ord, did you go as a division or as a company?
No, it was just...
It was an individual assignment?
It was a whole bunch of soldiers going to different places.
Okay, so you didn't really know the...
Didn't know what the...
And your assignment then was on a Liberty ship?
Yeah, so we got there and with 7 other guys I didn't even know.
Yeah, okay.
Because they put 8 of us on that Liberty ship in this little bunkhouse. They had 4 on each side of this ship. And then we took off out of San Francisco, and I kept looking for ships and convoys and maybe some help there, you know. We were out 2 or 3 days and still nobody showed up. We were doing a real speed of about 10, 14 knots, somewhere around it there. Just barely able to keep the ship afloat. And it took 18 days to get over to New Guinea. And before we got to New Guinea, they had a submarine alert. And it didn't turn out to much, obviously. I don't know what happened, but we were really nervous about that because we were by ourselves out there, sitting ducks. So that passed over, and then we started to... The sergeant aboard said, well, we're going to have to start giving you Ativan now for malaria down in the jungles there. And I didn't know what Ativan was. It was a tablet we thought it was an aspirin, so I shorted my mouth and chewed it, and boy, that was a mistake. I don't know if you ever heard of Ativan tablets, but that was a most miserable, sickening thing.
Nasty tasting, huh?
Oh, we swallowed it quick with a bunch of water. And throughout the whole time we were in the Pacific, if we go through a chow line, the sergeant was there to make sure you had that, because a week or 10 days later, if you didn't take it, you'd be down with malaria that quick. Mm-hmm. So we took it for the whole 2 years we were in the Pacific. Well, now when we sailed and we passed time, we played poker, and we had whatever money we got in Fort Ord from the Army, and they went back and forth to hands. I mean, they'd win it, we'd win it, we'd lend it to them. So the money just went back and forth.
Yeah.
Nobody won, nobody lost. Well, we started to see palm fronds in the water. We knew we were getting close to the land after about 17, 18 days. And pretty soon we started seeing New Guinea looming up out of the horizon. And you know, it was kind of exciting, yet I was apprehensive of what was coming up because the war was still going on in the islands there. And it was getting pretty serious now, you know. So we see palm fronds, and pretty soon New Guinea sprouted up in the horizon. And I stepped ashore at Finchhaven, which is the lower part of New Guinea. The British had half of New Guinea, and the Dutch had the other half at that time. And we were landed at Finchhaven, which was the British New Guinea. And I went aboard ashore as an infantry replacement, the 33rd Division 123rd Regiment was there ahead of me, so I went as a replacement, an infantry replacement. And we were there pretty near to a year, and a lot of things happened. We, I think about that. It was really a dense jungle area. I mean, we were just maybe, from the ocean to the camp was maybe just 100 yards or maybe 200 yards, and the camp was spread out on it, pretty close to the ocean. It was so almost impenetrable jungles back there, you know. It was really, they even had headhunters still in that country, up in the northern part, wherever. But those guys look like Charles Atlas. Those guys.
So you ran into them?
Oh yeah, we'd run them when we'd go out there. And they would always run around with their machetes, and they'd run up a tree and knock a few coconuts down, wham, wham, you had something to break out. It's just that quick. So we knew they could use those machetes really quick if you messed around with them.
What was the natives' attitude towards Americans or Japanese? Were they aligned with you or them?
Yeah. The natives, yeah, they were friendly.
Okay.
But when I went to Indonesia later in another time, but they hated the Japanese too, because the Japanese treated them really atrocious. So the natives didn't really go for them.
Okay.
I don't think in any of the islands.
Okay.
Excuse me, but one thing in New Guinea, it would rain, and I mean it would rain, and then the sun would come out, and you'd be up to your ankles in mud, and the dust would blow in your face. That's how hot it got. It would dry the top layer, and you'd be still walking in mud.
Yeah.
And a really funny thing I think about, they had the outhouses, real long, maybe 10 to 15 boulders, side back to back, you know, with a tent over it. And every morning a guy at duty would go to spray it with diesel fuel to kill the smell and whatever.
Yeah.
Well, one morning the guy went out there and he grabbed aircraft fuel by mistake and sprayed that all up. And some guys go in there after breakfast and threw their cigarette.
Oh,
Boom!
oh God.
This shit house blew.
Anybody get hurt?
It said, where were you when the shit house blew? But there was a few burns, but nothing serious, you know. So we kind of hesitated when we went in and threw a cigarette first before we went in. Another time we were walking on the beach in the afternoon, late in the evening, and a buddy of mine had his backpack and was walking away from me, and I was going to run to him and scare him like I was a Jap and grab his shoulders. But he must have heard me because he reached back and pulled his machete, and my hand came on the machete, and he pulled the machete through my hand.
Oh, God.
Almost took off 3 fingers. I didn't get a Purple Heart for that. But I go to the medic, and the blood spurting, and the guy says, oh, I'll go get the doc. And he comes back and said, the doc will be here when he finishes hand of peanut butter. It's good. So, well, and things like that going on and off. It's just funny things. And all of a sudden, I don't know, we knew there was Japs still up in the northern part of the island. And we heard there were Jap Marines, a holdout. And then we knew they were still in the Philippines and wherever else. They were all the way up the chain, you know. So we knew we weren't going to sit in New Guinea very long because we were infantry and there was a war going on. So finally it came that we were going to go on a 5-day search and find the Japs in North New Guinea there. And we had to go across a river to get there in ducks. And there was no way back. A 5-day, what did they call it? I don't remember what we got. In other words, we had to spend 5 days out there before they come back and get us.
Okay, like a search and destroy operation?
Yeah. And so they take us across in ducks. And we started out that first day and ran into a few. And then later in the evening, we really hit a nest of them. And it was a really hot spot there. And I learned, that this is real. Those guys are out to kill you, you know. And it was 4 or 5 days of that in the daytime. Finally, that night we dug in, and somehow they backed off too. For some reason, they just backed off. And pretty soon we heard them talking. Here comes mortars shooting in, you know. And we said, "Oh boy, we got it coming now." At nighttime, they really like to do their night fighting. And so the mortars started dropping. We was hoping they didn't drop in the hole with us. And boy, those are fierce sounding things when they explode by you, you know. It's just a tremendous explosion. And we had a guy in the hole with us, 3 of us in the foxhole usually. And he claimed to be an atheist when those mortars started dropping. Oh God, he jammed the helmet over his head and he said, "Oh God, oh God." And I said, "Who are you calling on?" But we managed to go through that night, and then it was the rest of the days we'd be pushing them in head pushes. We'd push the Japs. And then we heard tanks coming one night, coming around behind us because the river was in back of us, and they were bringing a couple of tanks around behind us. So this was about the 4th night, so we decided we better get back to that river by the 5th day. So we started our way back. We were into pretty nice rifle fires and little battles and all right in those 3 or 4 days. It wasn't no picnic. I mean, it was touch and go in all those days. No details, but there was a lot of wounded, killed on both sides. And by the time we worked our way back, we were going back to the beach, and in the afternoon, we heard the tank coming around behind us, and our captain, Morrison, ran around with a bazooka and put that thing out. And by the time we got back to the beach, it was almost dark. And we were so beaten pooped, we just dropped them. And we heard the Japs that night pulling their dead out, and we just didn't care. We were so worn out, just laying on the beach there, waiting for those ducks. We called up and said, "Come and get us." They said, that's that word, the word they use.
Pick you up?
I can't think of that word. But then, you know, you were going to be out there 5 days, ducks will be there tomorrow morning.
Okay.
That's the 5 days up. So we just cooked out. We just beat up. Like I said, we didn't bother them, they didn't bother us to death. And the next day, the ducks did come and pick us up. It was the 5 days. So they brought us back into the camp.
How many were you? Did you go as a company
A company,
size?
yeah, it was a company,
So there's
yeah.
about 120,
Yeah, something
150.
like that, yeah.
Okay.
And, well, it was back to camp and kind of rest up a little bit. And I would,
At this point, what was your duty? What were you?
rifleman.
A rifleman in an infantry squad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, rifleman, yeah. That was the whole duty during the whole time.
Now sometimes they have them broken down. You know, you're a point man, you're a radio operator,
Oh.
machine gunner.
No, it was just we had our machine gunners and mortarmen and they were their own platoons.
Okay.
They were their platoons there. So it was a rifle platoon.
Okay.
Well, we finally got orders that we were going to leave New Guinea. And I don't remember now if they told us where we were going. But, no, I know one thing too that happened when we first got there to New Guinea. We were doing mostly dock duty and stuff like that, and we'd go in the docks and unload ships that would come in.
Mm.
And one night we were out there working night shift. The Army takes any time they want. And we had taken a break. The ships had 3 holes in them, and we were down at the last hole, and finally come up and went on the dock to take a break. And about that time, there was an air raid alarm, and I guess, boy, I don't know. I'm trying to remember why the air raid. But there was an Army ambulance that had come there because I think somebody in the ship was ill or something or got hurt. Not our Army, maybe one of the Merchant Marines or something. So the ambulance crew went in there. And then later, a short time after the air raid was full, and during the air raid, he went all the way down and killed himself in a hole. And they were bringing the ambulance driver back out to his own ambulance, you know. And I don't know if I recall that Betty Hutton, that singer, she sang a song, "Will Bring On Nobody's Murder But His Own." I don't know if you ever heard of that song, but it's an old one. And that's what she was singing on the ship's radio when they brought him out, you know. And that was just something I remember.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to recall, yeah.
To bring on his own murder.
Huh.
But we were, and then we were assigned, again, when I jumped ahead with the battle, but beginning in New Guinea, they assigned me to a company, and then we had perimeter duty in pillboxes.
Mm-hmm.
They were 4-man pillbox, big, maybe 6 by 8, down underground roof, and just a little screen around the opening there. And we were assigned, I was assigned with a few guys out there. And every time when I got off duty, I'd go, we had our bunks, and we had 2 down in the hole, in a big pillbox hole. And I'd have to start banging bugs and critters out of my bunk before I did in, so they started calling me Bugs Bonnette. Because my name is Bonnette, actually. So, Bonnette. But that lasted for a short while. And then we went back to the camp area. And for some reason, I had to dig another one, with 2 men. Well, we were digging holes all the time. I mean, 4 and 5 feet deep, to put a cot in there and a roof over it, and a duffel bag. Why we had to, well, I guess we had to carry them wherever we went. And they were in that hole with me and my buddy. And we were I was on duty or something, and a big rainstorm hit. And boy, within minutes, we heard water flushing it. And by the time I stood up in my cot, the water was up to my chest in that hole. It was a real gully washer. And the duffel bag was floating on. I had a picture of me and him emptying it out the next day with our helmets emptying the hole. It was a lot of fun at times. Well, anyhow, we were going to go to board troop ships to go to Philippines.
And when was this?
It was in late 44.
Okay.
Because just to come think of January of 45. January of 45, we boarded the troop ships, and it was an English troop ship. And when we were just out, it was breakfast time, so we went down in the chow hall, mess, and they just had tables to stand up at, and they served you beans and tea for breakfast. I said, oh boy, this is really a healthy meal. Beans and tea for breakfast for a GI, you know. But, well, on that ship, again, it was loaded with us GIs, 3 holes deep, and each hole was filled with GIs, and they had just enough bunks everywhere. Canvas bunks, just enough where you could slide in them, and there was about 6 deep, all throughout the holes, for 3 deep, so we had a lot of GIs in that ship. And I mean, you didn't really know you had to slide sideways to get into that bunk. You bounce up, you hit the guy up above you, and we were down I was down in that glass hole, and I could hear that water rushing by the side of that ship, you know. And about that time, and the submarine alarm sounded from the bridge. And what happens, all those hatches will slide shut. You can't get out. From the bridge, the captain locks up every one of those holes. The reason being, if a torpedo hit, it may just hit that hole and those guys are gone, but the rest of the ship could operate.
Huh.
So that means...
So they don't give you a chance to get out of there first. Huh.
If the alarm sounded, they were shut. And man, I got such a panic attack you won't believe. Talk about claustrophobia, I could have clawed out that hole. I mean, beside that ship, I had fingernails But after a while, man, I don't know how long it took, but man, I was biting nails. And when that come all clear and the hatches opened up, I hit that top deck, and I didn't come down again until we hit Lady.
I
mean,
agree
until we
with
hit the Philippines. I mean, and a lot of other guys were all over the top of those decks too. They weren't going to be down that hole no more if they couldn't get locked in like that. So we wound up in Lingayen Gulf, in the Philippines, in Luzon. And we went into a camp area. But what's funny, when we went ashore from landing barges.
So let me quick. Is this the invasion of?
No, no, it had already been.
Okay.
Just they were still, I don't know, all of the jobs.
Oh yeah, they were all over many islands.
But
Yeah.
it wasn't the invasion because we went ashore and we didn't reach any opposition, so they were pushed already in. I don't know who did it before us.
Right.
But we were coming in there to probably do some more cleaning up or working over the jobs. But we were going into a camp area, and a couple of we'd run a little Filipino village, and a couple of Filipino boys come out saying, "Victory Joe chocolate, Victory Joe chocolate." So there had been GIs ahead of us, they giving them chocolate. Everybody in the island wanted chocolate. The troops, the natives. We got to a camp area, and from there, there were different towns, not towns, mostly villages, and along the shoreline mostly, and maybe inland a little bit, but anything further than that, it was just total mountains, up, and down, just really rugged, and just full of jungle area. And, I mean, it's just impassable almost. There wasn't a flat spot that we ever saw from the time we left the Gulf until we hit the Baguio. But we would be, maybe we wound up with 10 days in the camp area, and then we head out for the hills. This is real stuff now. We're finding out. We had a taste of it in New Guinea. We knew we didn't know quite know, but we would go out as a company, not as a big group. It was, companies all here and there.
Yeah.
And we were, as far as we knew, we were the only ones in there, our company, because that was the area we were into. Well,
did you have any idea the size of the enemy force?
not until I got that computer printout.
Oh, okay.
And they didn't even tell us.
Okay.
But there were thousands of Japanese still in there. And there were pockets here and there.
Right.
And that was the idea, to clean up. You clean up, we'd push and they'd back. And if we didn't clean them out, they'd push and beat us up somewhere else. We were going to take this hill one time. We went up and they fired and chased us back down. We tried it twice and they chased us down because it was built into the hills, with doors and everything. So we called the Air Force, and they come out and napalm the top of that hill. They burn it to a cinder. Let's go get them. We got halfway up and they chased us right back down again. They didn't do a thing but burn the grass off the top of that hill.
Yeah.
Trees or whatever. So we said, forget it. Our captain said, we're not going to do it. So we go around, because we knew they would come out and meet us at another place. They would leave it and come around. So we were constantly doing this tag with the Japanese. With death was the answer to that too. So it was just pushing, and pushing up these hills and down those hills, and they'd come around and we'd go around, and it was incredible. And we thought we were the only ones out there. We didn't. Nobody. That's it. Where we were in that part of New Guinea, Philippine Islands. That's where we were. That was our fight right there. Chasing them and whatever. And then it was 10 days back into the camp area for a rest. And that's what we did. Had amusement? No, there was just rest when we got back to the camp area.
So you're in combat almost every day, I guess, right? When you're out in the field?
Yeah, it was no, you didn't say the same foxhole twice.
Yeah.
And so it was in those 20 or 30 days you were out. So we'd be back in the rest camp, and there was a couple of guys would set up a laundry there in the rest camp. They took gas tanks and split them in half and opened them up, filled them with water, and they'd run a pipeline to a 50-gallon drum of fuel and let it drip to start a fire to warm the water up to do the laundry for the guys, you know, to at least get some clean clothes now and then. Well, one day, the tank went dry, so the guy went there to open another one, and the compression in the air just shot that gasoline out, hit that fire, and blew up like a bomb, and burned those two guys to death.
Oh my God.
And the laundry guys. So we had to have a funeral for him, and I was part of the funeral guard there. And we were waiting for it to take place, and I was sitting on some kind of box or something, and the guy was up there, my buddy was up there checking his pistol, and as he cocked it back, he fired a shot and it went through my pants leg. And I said, wait a minute, who are you fighting me with the shots? You know, he shot a hole in my pants leg, and so I had to take a deep breath on that one, you know. Come on, guys, the enemy's out there, you know. So it sounds like all fun, but this is...
Oh, it's serious stuff,
serious.
absolutely.
I can laugh at it now, you know.
Yeah.
So... oh my. Well, anyhow.
Let me ask you a question now. You're with the 33rd, and you're in this company now for about a year?
I've been with him from New Guinea.
Since
It's
New Guinea.
going to second year.
So it's going on your second year
Yeah,
now.
New Guinea.
So you know all of these guys, you're moving with them at the same time, they're all with you. Do you have any idea how many deaths or wounded during all this?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, because they're sporadic, I guess, and you get replacements, that kind of thing.
True, and all I found out was in this, and that's all I'm not even interested in that now, you know,
Mhm.
but that's that method, but anyhow, again,
Okay.
we head out into the hills, and one morning we got up, going up to this top of this ridge. Just as we got at the top, there's a gully down there, and a machine gun had fired on them. And as soon as we heard the machine gun, our squad dropped down in that tall grass, and it hit a couple of the guys up on the bridge, and we were crawling closer and closer, and that machine gun was blowing the grass down. We could see it, you know. I could just see it. And it's kind of funny, I'm missing it. I was on my face in that dirt and hearing that machine gun chattering over my head. I don't know, maybe hit that wall or something. But we were in the deep grass laying down. And I looked and I saw an ant crawling on the leaf. Straight. And this is funny to me today. And I just looked and said, ant, I wish it was as small as you. and it's funny now, but boy, that was serious. And this later I told it to some of the guys in the platoon, and the guys would say, hey, Bonnette, tell me again about that ant on that leaf. And I was going to clobber him, but he was just joking. But in the midst of all of this,
Yeah.
it was serious. Because anyhow, we threw a couple of grenades in there, and they silenced it out, and we went around somewhere else, took off in another area. It was like this pockets of them. And then every now and then, if we was on the road, we'd hit a full-fledged battle, because they'd be built in on both sides of the roads, and we'd and then one of those times, you come around in a gully like that, and they opened up, and we were just diving for the sides, and some of the guys didn't get out of the road. And my buddy and I saw one of our friends, so we jumped on the road and pulled him off the road, and you hear that gravel being
Sprayed.
kicked up from the bullets, you know.
Yeah.
And then we'd take their wallets or whatever information they had and put a dog tag in their mouths, because the burial details they come later to tell who they were. And we'd keep all personal information. And as the thing, after this all died down, they moved on, the Japs, and we moved on. And I looked through his wallet, and his buddy of mine had a wife and 3 kids. And that hit me really hard then. I said, why? Why this guy? I was single. I was just 19, 20 years old. And this guy had a family.
So you were close to him, I guess.
Yeah. Anyhow, we went on, and after so many days, we were back in the rest area. And we took, again, just a time of all things in the rest area, they hold an inspection. Imagine that. That's the Army for you.
Yeah.
Here you are in combat in the rest area. We had our 8-man tent. 3, 6, 7, 8, a 10-man tent. 3 on each side and 2 on the flaps on each side of the long tent. Bunks all straightened out. We had a petition over to carry stuff. And I'm on one of the ends by the flap. And the sergeant's coming along, heard me, and he's coming along on this side here. And they take your rifle, screen the bolt, shut the bolt, pull the trigger. When you pull the trigger, thing fired. Bam! And I saw daylight spring out through over my head, a couple inches in the tent. Number 2. Who were they trying to get here? I hope number 3 didn't come out 3 in the red, you know. But so, man, I just sunk down in that bunk and looked at daylight coming through that tent, and I said, man, this is getting bad. You know, twice already they're aiming at me. So, while they in the rest areas there, they would, every month you would get a case of beer, believe it or not, packed in sawdust. You ever tried drinking a can of beer out of sawdust in 90-degree temperature? You pop that can and you look like a chipmunk. Well, we drank that dumb stuff anyway. and it's a crazy thing to do. Well, I was 20 years old. What did you do? 19, 20, somewhere in that age.
Yeah.
And anything goes. But, well, okay, it's time to go out again. Well, here come the semis, and they had, at that time, it was segregated when I was in the war there.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the black guys were truck drivers, or they worked in the supply or in the kitchens or something like that. Well, they were truck drivers. So they were taking us out to, well, let me back up here a minute. I got to go back all the way to New Guinea where we hit combat first. And then after we got had that baptism of fire, as they called it, we found out we got $10 a month raise for being in combat. You know, I was willing to give the colonel 15 if he let me be a truck driver, but he didn't buy that, you know. So, but anyhow, so much for that. He didn't buy that at all. But the truck drivers come pick us up, you know, and getting closer to where you can hear firing. And the truck driver would stop and say, as far as I go, out, he'd dump us out and head back to camp. And I looked at him and said, man, I wish I was a truck driver. Because I knew it was ahead, you know. So, but we were going again into the hills. It was always this. Man, I mean, steep. And we were pushing all hard one day and chasing Japs and pushing them back. And every night it was a new foxhole. We coming down a deep, real ridge, and we saw the only flat spot I ever saw in the whole Philippine Island. and it was like a resort area, a deserted resort area. We saw a swimming pool. And in the swimming pool, man, we started in it. And peeling clothes and dropping it. And I hit that water, it was hot water. About hit the deep end, about couldn't come up to the top, you know. Oh, before you know it, sure helped the muscles. But every day, though, when you're ready to dig in and you start cooling off, and your uniforms would turn white with salt. The whole your fatigues would turn white with salt. I mean, like we just plastered it all over us. And they'd say, you better take some more salt tablets. A lot of good that did, you know, but maybe to a point. Back to the rest camp. And then there was a couple of, we were pretty close to a little village. And we'd go checking around. One of my close buddies and two other guys, I have pictures of them in there. And we met some Filipino girls. They had a little Filipino restaurant in a bamboo shack, like. It was different from Army job. We'd go there and just eat whatever they offered, you know. And so I have pictures of that too. But it was good to get away from, quote, the Army. It's not very far, but it was away. And then one time we were back in the rest camp. So in between we're doing all this hill tromping. And we come back to a rest camp. And it was about that time they were starting to let the guys go home on a point system. So many months you get a point and whatever. It was a point system. You had to get so many points to go home. And the first sergeant had been in there a while, and he was going to leave on a point system in a month or so. So they would give him a party. And so they went in the kitchen, they set up a bar, of course, and they got this Filipino liquor. And we tried that. You pour some out and throw a match, and it burned all the way to the neck of the bottle. You know, flame would come up. I said, boy, that stuff is weird, you know, pretty hot stuff. And they set this bar up. I never drank in my life, hardly maybe a beer or so. And they started to take in what they call Boilermakers. Shot of whiskey and a drink of that beer. Shot of that whiskey. I had about 3 or 4 of those in the phone and started sliding down like a snake to hit the deck. I woke up in my bunk just sick with a dog. And so was all the other guys. You hear them moaning and groaning and heaving, you know. That was the last of that for me. No more of that. I might take a little glass of wine now and then, but that settled me on that stuff. It was
cured you, huh?
Dumb stuff. No more of that. So here we go. Up into the hills again. Baguio, somewhere over there. I saw it. We get to the top of a hill, and the sergeant would say, just 1 more, 2 more hills. And there's 3 more up there, you know. Mountains, not hills. They're mountains. I mean mountains. Just 1 or 2 more, and we'll be in Baguio. In the meantime, we've got to clear out all these jobs to get to Baguio, too. So we dug in for the night. And it was a pitch black night. No kidding. I've heard of stories of pitch black night, but I mean, you couldn't see any further, but maybe you could reach out there. Yeah. And we just pushed the Japs out, and we heard them talking and yakking at night. And we kept real quiet because we didn't want them to find our position, you know. So pretty soon, we'd hear them tap their grenade. They had to hit the helmet with it, and then they threw it. And it would land on this side of the hole. Tap it, and it would land on that side. I don't know how we'd ever get a grenade or a mortar in the hole. I guess the Lord was with me. God was with me.
Yeah.
He was the whole time. And boy, and nobody fired. Thank goodness, because he fired, he wanted to see the rifle blast. And so the guys kept steady, and we were just, man, these guys, I said, well, after almost 2 years, you learn not to be panicky. You get panicky and you lose everything, your life and the whole bit. But they kept throwing those grenades, and we'd hear them chattering. And then they got quiet. Pretty soon all we heard, surrender or die, in English. Now wait, this is not coming from our guys. That's coming from in front of us, you know. Surrender or die. And still nobody said nothing. And the Japs disappeared. Off they went, see, because they knew we were going to come back. Oh. But boy, that was a because it would be in the hole. If they come in, it was you and them in the hole, hand to hand. But anyhow, they backed off when they knew we wouldn't fire, and they're not quite sure where we were, so they were kind of hesitant too. They backed off to meet us the next day. Well, we pushed them again. The next day we went into kind of a swampy area, and you had to kind of half dig in half of a swampy area. And it was a bank with the path that went through the bank. We set our machine guns up there, and we were all lined up in the swampy area, dug in as much as we in the swamp area. But we found out too that this swamp is full of leeches, and we had leeches all over us. God, trying to get them things. But that was when they came through that night, the Japs, and through that path, and they stacked up Jats in that. I mean, there was a pile up of Jats in that path there, in that gully there. Yeah, it's funny, you can almost see it now, thinking about it. But well, anyhow, we kept going up and down, and finally, we finally got Baguio in sight. We finally cleared out all the Japs out of Baguio. And we went, I finally have one little picture of Baguio. And it was pretty well shelled out too. But we said, well, what's next here now? So we come out of Baguio and went all the way back down to the rest area. And we were in the rest area in August, and heard that the war was over, or at least the Japs had surrendered. And while we were in that rest area, though, we were having amphibious training. We'd be going on landing barges out the nets and into the landing barges, here right there from the rest camp. We were doing this practicing landing barges, but we knew there was only one place left, was Japan then. And we later found out that our division was going to be spearhead of Japan, part of the spearhead of Japan. And I know if that had happened, I wouldn't be here today. Because there had been a lot of casualties on both sides. And it's a sad thing that the A-bomb had to happen, but it was the best thing that happened, if I can put it in such a strange way. Because so many thousands would have been killed on both sides. But as we were doing the landing barges at the end of August, we just started steaming right to Japan. We were already on the troop ships. And so, I don't know, from Philippines to Japan, how many days? I don't remember, a week, 10 days, something like that. And that was another, what kind of a feeling you get. You finally go into Japan after all this and see what it's all about. So we got into the bay in Japan, and I forgot the name of the little town. But I went out on deck just before daybreak, and when I looked out, the sun was coming up, and those rays were coming out like the Japanese have on their flags, and it was incredible, to see the rising sun, as the Japanese call themselves, and yet it was no fear anymore. The war was over, and we knew there was a peace, and there was home in sight. About that time we could figure, and this was in September of '45. Not too long after all the bombs were dropped, the A-bombs or whatever, and we went in as occupation troops, and from that place we went all the way through the island to the other side to Sakurazuka, Japan, which was it was a pretty fair little city. And I mean, they were really, I don't think too many tourists ever been there, because it seemed like it was so far in this part of Japan somewhere. they would be in Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka, all those places, tours before the war. But this is way over on the other side. And all the people, the men would be in their black frocks with their high hats, and Omama-san would be running behind them with loads on their back. And we went in as occupation troops, and the first duty we had was to go house to house and clean up any type thing that looked like a weapon. A pocket knife to a samurai sword, rifles, pistols, whatever with their knives. And our company and whoever else was around us went through the whole town. And we had a warehouse full of that stuff. I brought home I sent home a samurai sword and a naval officer's sword, but somehow or other my son got rid of it somewhere when I then that's another story.
Yeah.
But anyhow, and then 2 or 3 of us would go through the town, the city, to visit it, to see what's going on, besides when we're not cleaning up the town with weapons. And we get on streetcars and buses. And the man was a top banana in Japan. The woman just followed him. And every time a seat would be open, a man would sit down if a woman was standing. And we said, what kind of deal is that, you know? He's going to learn some Americanized ways. So when the seat would open up, we'd grab him and said to the woman, you sit down. We'd just point, you know, and hold him. Oh, she was scared to death. And we'd hold him up and let that seat open until she finally said, boy, he was looking at us with blood. If we did, he truly, you know, we could have gone missing any time. They wouldn't have known the difference. But we did every time we got on the bus or something. 20 years old, you know. 20 and a half, actually. Well, then we got to meet a couple of students, college students, Japanese guys, and they invited us over for dinner. Sure, why not? Crazy, you know, because, again, we were just new there. It could have been, we went out to eat. You sit on the pillows, and the mother and daughters would be sitting against the wall, and the old man would call them, they'd bring food, and they'd go and sit down, and they'd wait till we eat, and then they would eat later, say. It was a good meal. But I said to myself, man, they could have put poison in this for all we know. We could have been disappearing again. But
Actually, I'm surprised that the Japanese accepted you.
oh, they were, yeah.
That way.
I mean, they were, everywhere we went, they were real friendly.
Yeah.
And it surprised us too, you know, as friendly as they were. But, but it was, and it was, you know, we had a Red Cross there, and some of the Japanese gals were working in the Red Cross. And we talked with them and with the students, and said, we had many friends killed in the war. And I looked at them and said, so did I. You know, so don't give me a sad tale about losing friends. We had lots of our friends killed too in that war. And then, you know, out of the whole thing, I think sometimes I think today, it was a frightening thought that had that war not ended, I would probably be in Tokyo Bay somewhere. You know, and I think, like I said, it's all because God was watching over me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he knew he had some kind of plan for me. Maybe it's to this, you know. But he watched over me the whole time, and I was ready to go home. This was in January of 40s. Oh no, one more thing. A friend of mine made lieutenant in the field, and he come over and said one day, he said, hey, how about going to Tokyo? This is what it's all about, you know. We got to Japan, we got to see Tokyo. So he said, yeah, we'll catch Osaka and Kyoto and all those things on the way back. So I said, sure, let's go. And we went over to Tokyo, and it was October 25th, 1945. I made my 21st birthday. I became a man in Japan. And that's one of the biggest things aside from had it not been for that atom bomb, I probably wouldn't have been. But We celebrated with Japanese sake, and you say, oh man. Well, I guess I earned that title now. But, and then, well, there was about time I had so many points I was able to go home. Well, the war ended, they were starting to phase us out, so many in a month. And it was my time to go home, so they sent us to Yokohama to board a troop ship to go back to Seattle. Well, I was waiting in the barracks for the ship the troop ship that would take us back to Seattle. And man, I could taste home big time. This is almost 2 years overseas. It was, and I was in New Guinea coming out of combat. I was on the beach one day and I said, what have I got to look forward to? The end of the war or death? That was the two options I had. And it was almost 2 years before I set foot in the U.S. again. I wish we'd had 8-month tours of duty like they have now, or whatever they call it, But it was do or die. That's the way it was in them days, It was a world war, and that was it. But anyhow, I was at a demarcation point, and I quit taking the Adaman tablets. I said, man, I had enough of that. I was almost looking more like a Japs in the Japs look with the yellow Adaman tablets. When any of our men was shot and killed, it almost turned yellow from that Adaman, So I quit taking it, and I could sort of feel the fever coming on. And I knew what it was. But I just got tired of those Adaman tablets. And I was getting warm, and they finally got us aboard ship. And I waited till it was a day out at sea before I went to sick bay, because they weren't going to dump me off back into bed. I waited until that malaria was over. And I must have had 104 fever or something, And it was a 16, 17-day voyage, maybe 19, back to Seattle from Yokohama. And I was about 14 days in sick bay. I mean, I couldn't eat nothing. I couldn't hold nothing. By the time I got to Seattle, I weighed 126 pounds. But I was a pound ahead. I went in at 125.
So did you get malaria in Japan, or was that from earlier?
No, from anywhere in New Guinea, Philippines.
Could have been anywhere then.
Anywhere. Okay. The mosquitoes were everywhere,
Okay.
But I got it just by not taking it. It just came on me because it was in my system.
Okay.
And I just didn't take the Adaman pills to keep it down. It just kept the Adaman pill. But then when I got home, it was nice. It was good to be home. I mean, to be with the family. And I don't remember if I got some Adaman from the Army before I went home. But anyhow, how did that work? But anyway, maybe I wasn't taking it. And I got home. And it started to get a fever again. After I was home maybe about a month. And I went to the Marine Hospital there in New Orleans. I couldn't find anything wrong. 3 days I was in there. Fever doesn't come on until, it doesn't show until the fever really hits. That's what I understand. Yeah. And then they could tell us the malaria because, and so, let me back up. That's confusing here. I was going with this girl, and she works in the stock exchange in New Orleans. And I was waiting for her to get off work, sitting in the stock exchange, and I passed out. They took me to the Marine Hospital. And I stayed 2 or 3 days, and they couldn't find anything. I went home, and then I started to feel fever coming on. I went back to the hospital. Yep, you got malaria. And so they said, well, we've got a new tablet here. You want to try it, a new prescription? I said, sure. So they gave me 3 tablets, and I haven't had malaria since. Whatever it was, I don't know, but I don't even know if they use that anymore, what they use for malaria nowadays.
Quinine?
I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
No, that was already part of it, in the Adaman tablets, I think.
That was in it, okay.
Yeah. So whatever this new stuff, but it sure knocked the heck out of it.
So have you been plagued by that
No.
malaria? No?
Not ever since.
So it actually cured you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know, living in Louisiana too, anyhow, I guess that's all I've got to
Okay.
run out to.
Do you have any trouble assimilating back into a normal life?
No, no, that's what I say, you know. What is PMST or what is it?
PS, yeah, post-traumatic stress.
I said maybe we were too dumb. We didn't know what that was about. That I didn't even think about it.
You know, it's interesting because when you come back, you're coming back with your company, right? Everybody that you were there
No,
with?
we're just independents. It wasn't the whole country. The guys were going home. We were just from all over.
Okay.
It was just all mixed. You're going home as we were when we went over there.
I kind of think that coming back with people that you've been there with, you kind of decompress together, you know?
No, it was just, man, get me home. That's all I'm interested in. And so that's all it was. By the time we got to Seattle to discharge you, it was a conglomeration of everybody from everywhere. Put us on a train and sent us home. And that was it. But to go back in civilization, no, civilization. Yeah, it was too.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I had any depressions or feelings of. Although I remember my mother and my sister would say, "Boy, you sleep with your eyes open." When I got home, you know, and if anybody had dropped a leaf, I'd pop up, you know.
Yeah.
It was that. My brother-in-law, he was in Europe. And he was shot by a sniper through the neck in a stand-up foxhole. Just took the flesh right through here, you know. And the blood splattered on the snow. He packed the snow, and if he did this way, it went right through.
Yeah.
But he happened to turn. But anyway, he and I were walking downtown on Canal Street, in a big town, and a car backfired. We were both on the ground.
Yeah.
Those kind of things just happened for maybe
For a while.
Yeah. We were kind of jumpy there. And that's the only thing I say. Two things that.
Okay, we're back on again. We had a battery failure. I didn't mention earlier that we're taping this from the Bay Pines Veterans Administration campus in St. Petersburg, Florida. Mr. Bonnette, you have a couple of last few things to say?
Now I'm turning. We kind of slipped.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, take a moment. Take a moment. We were talking about, you know, after, you know, assimilating and
Senior moment
some of
there.
that.
No, it may not seem like we were in any major beachheads or any terrific bloodshed and loss of life, but there was still loss of life. One life lost is no, its loss is not good, not even one. And I've always said, you know, maybe I haven't been on a major beachhead, but it doesn't take a major beachhead. It only took one jab and one bullet to send me into eternity, to end my life. So it doesn't make any difference whether I hit a beachhead or I was in a jungle somewhere with one jab sighting me down. You know, that's all it took, just one to end your life.
Yeah.
And I'm just whatever.
You're being shot at, whether you're in a big battle or in a small battle, it's still scary.
It's a bullet.
Yeah.
And towards the end of the war, the Japanese were using wooden bullets because they were running out of ammunition.
Huh.
And that was even worse than a lead bullet because it would
Splinter?
splinter, you know. And so they were really getting.
I did not know that.
Getting pinched towards the end there, and it was. I'm just thankful. I'm really thankful, you know, that I can sit here and talk about it. If it do any good to anybody, that's what's the point of the whole thing. And I'm glad that, you know, that God has given me 90 years, 91 years of life. That's what I am today, and looking forward to more, you know. And so I'm just really thankful that I was able to do what little I did. And there was thousands of other guys the same way. We were all in there to finish this, to do what we could.
Mhm.
what way we could, big, little, or indifferent, whatever it was. We wanted to do it, we did it. And I'm glad. And I say too that even today, back then, just when the war ended and I got home and people would ask me, and today I'd tell them, you know, I'm glad I did this because I got to see all those real exotic Pacific islands at the expense of Uncle Sam. You know? So I got some good out of it. I would have never gone New Guinea, Philippines, Japan. No, I wouldn't have gone to the Pacific. But Uncle Sam paid my way, you know.
That's a tough way to earn your vacation.
So, and I don't know if I'd want to do it again, but I'm glad I was able to and come through it.
Yeah.
I had two older brothers. He went in December 41, just before December 7th. He wound up in Fiji Islands for the duration of the war. And my second oldest brother, he was in the Navy Air Force, a naval photographer,
Okay.
aerial photographer in the Navy, and he spent his time in Hawaii. And then I had my second youngest brother. He was in the band in the States. I was you might say the youngest, and I had the best experience, the most fun. If you quote, it's not as funny to make fun of it, but I say that in jest.
Well,
So there was three of my brothers and myself that were in.
yours has been a hell of an experience, and it's been my pleasure to sit here with you and share it.
There was some sad times, and there was one of my buddies, and I tried contacting him, and I couldn't get any results. I went to see him after the war, and he lived in Detroit, Michigan, Louis Petroni. I call him Pete. And I don't know if he's gone now, passed on, but if there was any way I could get a hold of him, I sure would like to know if he's still around.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, at the end of my memoirs, I had a picture of him, he and I said, a friend is forever.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked that road to the end, I said, and you know, and it's the way it was. We did walk all those hills right to the end.
Did you keep in touch at all after you got out?
I couldn't get a hold of him, and I tried phoning, but no answers, and I don't know if he moved and passed on. There was one guy in my company, yes. He lived in Iowa. Yeah, Iowa. And I did get to go see him. And but not after the war. This was like, let's see, maybe 30 years later. I found out where he called me up on the phone, and I says, how in the world did they get that hold of me? On the internet, he said. But then the wife tried to get on the internet, but they wanted to give some money to give addresses, and they want money to do this, to find information of a buddy or whatever. And she said, that's no good.
Yeah.
But he got a hold of me, and I went to visit with him. And boy, it's after 30 years or so, 45, 85, maybe it was 40 years or so. I said, you don't look the same. I guess I didn't either. But when I drove up, man, he ran out, and we just hugged and kind of cried, you know.
Was he with you the whole time in the service?
Yeah, he was in my company.
Okay.
In one of the other platoons, or maybe. And he's the only one I got to see. And the others were scattered all over, of course. And it would be nice if you get a hold of someone, but it's getting kind of skimpy.
So maybe the next time you go to D.C., what is it? what is that again? The honor flight
Flight, yeah.
to DC. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe did you run across anybody else that was in your unit up there?
See?
Yeah.
No, there wasn't anybody on there. I was hoping it would be somebody, but
Yeah.
unless they moved down to Florida. But anyhow, I thank you for the experience.
It's been my pleasure.
And,
Anything else? We're good? Okay.